Guys, the Parliament of Victoria in Australia has opened an inquiry into high control groups, and that's going to spell problems for the Church of Scientology here in the UK. Let's talk about this. It's just going to be a short live stream this evening. This was kind of last minute, but I wanted to jump on before I head to bed. Hello to everybody in the chat. Hans Christian Schwartz is here. Guten Abend, mein Freund. We have Daniel Chamberlain. Thank you so much for jumping in. This was last minute. It wasn't scheduled, so I think a lot of people are going to be watching this on the replay. But let's talk about this. This is the website. I've shared it in the link, a link to it in the description down below. This is the website for the Parliament in Victoria, Australia. Inquiry into the recruitment. Hold on, let me just rearrange my screen. And let me take off that annoying thing on the bottom left. I forget to do every single time. All right. Inquiry into the recruitment methods and impacts of cults and organized fringe groups. Introduction here. Let's have a look. The Legislative Assembly Legal and Social Issues Committee has released insights from a recent questionnaire exploring recruitment methods and the impacts of cults and organised fringe groups. The questionnaire was conducted alongside the call for submissions to the inquiry, offering another way for people with lived experiences to contribute. It invited individuals to share perspectives on recruitment tactics and behaviours of coercive groups, supporting the committee's understanding of the complex and ongoing effects of involvement in these groups. The committee received 317 responses to the questionnaire. Now, one thing to note, this is a very lengthy process. It is something that has been ongoing for some time already and is going to continue ongoing for some time. Now, the government of Australia are looking into all high control groups, not just Scientology, but Scientology is certainly a part of it. They have been mentioned. And of course, this has wider implications for us ex-Scientologists here in the UK. And I'll tell you why in a second. But let's have a look at this news article that was published today about this inquiry. This is from ABC News. Scientology, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Revival Center among alleged high control charity groups. For 5 months, survivors shared their harrowing experiences to a Victorian parliamentary inquiry, shedding light on religious fringe groups and cults. Survivor accounts detailed allegations of child SA, psychological manipulation, forced isolation, brutal beatings, and fear-mongering. The inquiry received 286 public submissions, generally prepared by former members or their loved ones last year. The ABC has analysed the inquiry submissions to understand the prevalence of registered charities within the groups mentioned in public testimonies. Groups with 3 or fewer public submissions have been omitted from this data. There are 7 alleged cults or fringe groups with 4 or more submissions. The Geelong Revival Centre, City Builders Church, the Church of Scientology with 4 submissions, Revival Centres International, the Scientology Church of Jesus, Jehovah's Witnesses, and 2x2s. Of these, 6 are registered charities through the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, the ACNC, affording them significant tax advantages. Fundamentalist Christian sect 2x2s is not a registered charity for business in Australia. The ABC has previously reported on allegations of widespread historical SA within 2x2s. Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientology, and the list we just mentioned there are all registered charities. One account from an ex-Revival Centres member described violent disciplines as routine. Parents are encouraged to discipline their children. The submission read, "My husband was whipped with branches from a tree. The wooden spoon was the chosen implement in my home. Later, I smacked my children also." An account about Scientology alleged child abuse was not only ignored, but actively covered up, especially if the abuser is considered valuable to the organisation. Psychological control and fear-mongering both featured heavily among submissions. A former Jehovah's Witness described apocalyptic imagery used to instill fear and exert control. "We were shown pictures of people dying at Armageddon, which as a child was terrifying," the submission said. An ex-member of the Geelong Revival Centre described being cut off from their loved ones after making the decision to leave the group. Sound familiar, guys? Families were encouraged to completely disown brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers, the submission read. After I had left the church and my mother, she once gave me every photo she had of me from my childhood and told me I was no longer her son. Now, this is not about Scientology, this particular quote, but the similarities are uncanny. Harassment and surveillance of former members were also common themes. A former City Builders Church member said she moved cities multiple times after leaving the group to avoid running into members and alleged she was being actively monitored. I've been told by cult members and those who have recently left that my online activity is constantly surveilled and discussed at covenant meetings, the submission said. Again, sound familiar, guys? That is exactly what the Office of Special Affairs do in the Church of Scientology. The inquiry is examining recruitment practices as well as harm. Previous reporting uncovered the invasive, highly organised tactics used by Scientology to attract new members. Following that investigation, the ACNC announced it was investigating the group. Top 5 harmful behaviours experienced are mind control techniques or indoctrination, pressure to remain in the group or fear of punishment if leaving, fear-based teachings of apocalyptic beliefs, isolation from family and friends, and emotional abuse. Now, groups have responded to the allegations. The ABC has contacted each of the groups individually. Scientology, the Revival Centre, and the Geelong Revival Centre did not respond to requests for comment. In a statement, the Church of Scientology said that anti-Scientology submissions were unfounded. The Church of Scientology Australia shares the concerns expressed by mainstream faith leaders about the risk of this inquiry overstepping its mandate and adversely affecting legitimate and long-standing religious practices, the statement said. With respect to specific allegations, we note that the inquiry is conducted under parliamentary privilege, which permits submissions containing claims that might otherwise expose their authors to defamation proceedings. These submissions reflect narratives promoted and recycled online through social media by a collectivity of anti-religious activists, some of who have also sought government funding for newly established counselling businesses or advocacy groups. National spokesperson for the JWs said the witnesses did not wish to be involved in public debate. While it appears the JWs are not the intended focus of the inquiry, we respect each individual's right to share their experiences and perspectives. However, we have no desire to engage in public debate or dispute with former members. City Builders Church spokesperson said the accusations against the church lack verifiable detail, corroboration, and supporting evidence. City Builders Church upholds mainstream Christian belief and has been operating in our community for more than 30 years. Our church made a submission to the inquiry containing hard evidence, including letters, social media posts, verifiable timelines, and sworn statements that disprove the accusations against us. We're disappointed the committee has refused to give us a hearing and failed to take corrective action to protect legitimate faith communities from being conflated with cults. Every false claim that diverts attention and resources away from genuine cults fails victims who have suffered unimaginable harm. For an organisation to meet the criteria to operate as a charity in Australia, it must have only charitable purposes that are for the public benefit. According to the Charities Act 2012, advancing religion is a charitable purpose. I'm not going to carry on reading the whole thing. Apart from the mentions about Scientology here, it says, for the year ending 2024, the Church of Scientology reported total revenue of over $21 million. The group has also had significant assets with a total of nearly $138 million in the same year. Now, it's important to note here how this relates to the United Kingdom, because this is an inquiry over in Australia, which is a different legislation, a different country, different rules, different laws, different parliament. However, the Church of Scientology's UK operations are run through an Australian registered charity called the Church of Scientology Religious Education College Incorporated, COSRECI. COSRECI is registered with the ACNC and it's registered as an overseas entity. Those figures that were just mentioned there, the $138 million in assets and the $21 million turnover, do not relate to the Church of Scientology's activities in Australia. Those numbers are for COSRECI's filing, which is the UK church. It's registered in Australia as a bit of a tax loophole because Scientology was rejected charity status here in the UK in 1999 because the Charity Commission here found that Scientology does not benefit the public. So they registered as a non-profit in Australia as an overseas entity that does business exclusively in the United Kingdom to escape government scrutiny. Quite often, when I've been speaking to members of parliament and various law enforcement officers and so on here in the UK, one of the common themes is, well, they're registered in Australia, so it's not our problem, even though the abuse is happening here in the UK. And when I've spoken to people in Australia, they've said, well, they only operate their business in the UK. So although they're registered here, it comes under the UK jurisdiction. And this is exactly why they have registered in such a way, to escape scrutiny. So, why is this important? It's important because this is an inquiry looking at not just the recruitment tactics, but the harm that cults are doing and high control groups with relation to Australia. And that opens the door for an inquiry into Scientology's UK practices, because the UK church operates and is based in Australia. So it's really, really important for legislators, for the committee who are reviewing this evidence and tabling the motions and hearing and reading the evidence and submissions from survivors. It's really important they understand that Scientology is registered in Australia but operates only in the UK. They do have an Australian-based arm. There are orgs in Australia, but they are legally, from a corporate entity perspective, entirely separate from the Church of Scientology Religious Education College Incorporated, which is the UK arm. So, although the inquiry is in Australia and looking at the harm of cults and the stories of survivors in Australia, if they're looking at Australian registered charities, they need to be looking at Cosrecki, which is the UK, and they need to be speaking to UK survivors. To give you a bit of background for those who don't know who I am or haven't been following my channel, I'm a former Scientologist. I was on staff at the Church of Scientology in London as a child. I was forcibly held against my will. I was forced and locked into a room, forced to do a confessional and so on. The abuse that I suffered is nothing compared to many other survivors of Scientology here in the UK. I know many people, Danielle Chamberlain in the chat is one of them, who suffered child SA here in the UK at the hands of Scientology. Now, any person who worked for Scientology in the UK, whether that's in the Sea Org or whether that's at a Class 5 city level org, you were an employee, a worker for Cosrecki, which is an Australian registered non-profit charity. So, if you were a survivor, if you were abused by Scientology in the UK, it was being perpetrated by an Australian registered organisation. So I just want to put it out there that this commission, this committee, this inquiry should absolutely be reaching out to ex-Scientologists here in the UK, because an Australian registered firm is abusing people abroad. Of course, those people in the UK should also be reporting to law enforcement here. I'm not suggesting the Parliament of Victoria need to step in from a law enforcement or a jurisdiction perspective, but it does absolutely fall in their jurisdiction within this inquiry to look at the harms being done by the firm that is registered in Australia. So I put a link down below to the website if you want to get in contact with the inquiry. I think everybody should do that if you are a survivor of abuse within Scientology in the UK, and make sure you mention that you are in the UK, the abuse happened here, and you're not asking the inquiry to step in and do something about what happened to you, but you do think it is important for the inquiry to understand the abuse is being carried out by an Australian registered charity that is not recognised in the UK for charitable purposes, because Scientology could not prove that it has a public benefit. Really, really important that I think everybody should do that. And if you need any help, obviously, I'm more than happy to offer my guidance and support. Let's have a quick look at some of these comments here as I've been going through, and we'll wrap this up. I did say it was only going to be a short one. Dark Stars here saying, fun fact, Senator Nick Xenophon was a major opponent of Scientology in Australia. His name is Eerie. Yeah, absolutely. Nick Xenophon he made really significant strides in terms of holding Scientology accountable for things like tax fraud and tax evasion in Australia. He really, excuse me, escalated things in terms of the public awareness. I think that was in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, something like that. He, I understand, is no longer standing as an elected official in Australia. But nonetheless, the reason the ACNC exists is because of the work he was doing. And there are videos online of the consultation between the Australian and the UK government, specifically about Scientology, because at the time, Australia didn't have like a charity commission like we do here in the UK. And when they were looking at setting the ACNC up, they asked the UK, what's your model? How do you do things? Because we have a public benefits test. And as part of that conversation that Nick Xenophon started, the UK Charity Commission said to Australia, look, we have a public benefit test because if you are going to try and claim tax exemption, we feel that you should therefore be held accountable and there should be charitable aims. You should have to prove that you are doing good to the community. And Scientology fell short of that public benefits test. And so they weren't given charity status in the UK. They subsequently set up the ACNC in Australia with a similar public benefit test. But for some reason that is completely beyond me, the UK church registered in Australia managed to pass their public benefit test in Australia, even though it's not benefiting anybody in Australia. It's only operating in the UK. And the UK Charity Commission recognised that it doesn't benefit anybody here anyway, either. So I don't know how it passed the benefit test, but it did. And that's important context. But thank you so much for your comment. Lou Peter is here. Thank you so much. Eric here says Five Eyes, it included Canada also. Yeah, absolutely. Five Eyes is absolutely a thing. And hopefully this will open the door potentially for an inquiry here in the UK, maybe in Canada and in other countries too. But I think the focus of this video and the reason for me talking to you is if you are a survivor in the UK, you should be involved in this inquiry. And I don't think enough efforts have been made by the inquiry to reach out to victims of abuse at the hands of the Australian registered Scientology church that operates here in the UK. Danielle here saying, gentle nudge to please hit the like button and share. It helps the algorithm spread information. Absolutely. Thank you so much for the reminder. Hans Christian Schwartz here. Question, can Australian exes do something or have a voice in this? Absolutely. And as you saw from the information that I just shared on the website and on the news article, Australian ex-Scientologists have been a part of it. They have submitted statements. There are a number of statements that have been made by ex-Scientologists in Australia. So 100%. If you're in Australia, you should also be a part of this. D5 here saying, good morning, Alex from Melbourne. Thank you so much. Guys, I did say this was just going to be a short one. I'm still recovering from this sickness. I am feeling miles better, but I just wanted to bring this information to you. Please do contact the inquiry if you feel you have a story that you would like to be heard or considered as part of the inquiry, and just make sure you make it very, very clear that although it happened in the UK, it happened at the hands of an Australian registered charity, which needs to be considered as part of the hearing. Guys, thank you so much. If you want to support the channel, you can do so through Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal. The links are in the description down below. I'm organising an event for survivors to share their stories in a public format in June down in East Grinstead. I've shared information about that on my last live stream. And if you can't go but would like to support the event anyway, I've set up a wishlist item on Buy Me a Coffee so you can pay it forward, for example, to help someone come who doesn't have the financial means or to contribute towards event costs, that sort of thing. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for those of you who've already done that. If you want to support the channel in a non-financial way, the best way of doing that is liking, subscribing, commenting down below once the live stream finishes. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you all on the next one. Go, power, Phaetons.